My name is Nettie Coleman, and at 62, I never imagined I'd be starting over again. After losing my husband, Frank, I reluctantly moved into my daughter Megan's guest house. We had a good arrangement until her husband, Jake, asked me to co-sign a $150,000 loan for his new business venture. When I declined after careful consideration, my own daughter looked me in the eye and said, "Then don't expect to stay here long." Rather than live where I wasn't wanted, I packed my things and left with what little dignity I had left. I'd love to know where you're watching from today. If you've ever had to make a difficult family decision, please hit that like button and subscribe to our channel. You won't believe what happened just a few days after I walked away. Frank and I were married for 41 beautiful years. We weren't wealthy by any means, but we had built a comfortable life together in our modest three-bedroom home in Riverdale. Frank worked as a mechanical engineer at the same manufacturing company for 35 years, while I taught third grade at Riverdale Elementary until retirement. We raised two wonderful children, Megan, always the ambitious one with perfect grades and color-coded planners, and David, the creative free spirit, who eventually settled into a solid career in graphic design across the country in Oregon. Our plan had always been simple: retire comfortably, travel a bit, spoil our grandchildren, and age gracefully in the home where we'd made so many memories. But life rarely follows the scripts we write for it. 2 years ago, on an ordinary Tuesday morning, Frank complained of indigestion after breakfast. By lunchtime, he was gone, a massive heart attack that no one saw coming. At 67, my Frank, with his booming laugh and gentle hands, became just a memory, leaving me alone in a house that suddenly felt cavernous and cold. Grief is its own journey, but what complicated mine was the financial nightmare I discovered in the weeks following the funeral. Despite Frank's steady career and our seemingly stable finances, we were in trouble. There were medical bills from a procedure Frank had undergone the year before, complications that required an extended hospital stay that our insurance only partially covered. I discovered credit card debt I never knew existed. Frank had been quietly handling financial struggles without burdening me. And most devastating, his life insurance policy was far smaller than I had believed, barely enough to cover the funeral expenses and a few months of mortgage payments. My children were shocked when I finally admitted the extent of my financial situation. David offered to send money from Oregon, but with two children in college, I knew he was stretched thin himself. Megan, always practical, offered a different solution. "Mum, we have that guest house we've been using for storage. It's just sitting there. Why don't you sell the house, pay off the debts, and come live with us? At least until you figure out your next steps." Her husband, Jake, nodded enthusiastically. "It makes perfect sense, Nettie. The housing market is hot right now. You'll get top dollar for your place. And Emma and Leo would love having their grandmother around all the time." I was reluctant at first. I'd been independent my entire adult life. The thought of living in my daughter's guest house, being dependent on her generosity, made my stomach clench with anxiety. But after 3 months of draining my savings to maintain a house I could no longer afford, reality won out. I sold the family home for a decent price, used most of the proceeds to clear Frank's debts, and moved into Megan and Jake's guest house, with the few possessions I couldn't bear to part with. The guest house was small but lovely. One bedroom, a tiny kitchenette, a cozy living area, and a bathroom with one of those rainfall showerheads that felt like pure luxury. It sat at the back of their sprawling property in an upscale neighborhood where all the homes looked like they belonged in a magazine. Megan had decorated it with new furniture in soothing greys and blues, setting it up as a fresh start for me. The first 6 months were surprisingly harmonious. I found joy in being close to my grandchildren: Emma, a precocious 6-year-old with Frank's curious mind, and Leo, an energetic 4-year-old who never stopped moving. I picked them up from school 3 days a week, giving Megan time to focus on her marketing executive role. I cooked Sunday family dinners, taught Emma to bake my famous apple pie, and read endless stories to Leo. I contributed what I could financially, $400 monthly toward utilities and groceries, which was significant from my modest teacher's pension. Megan had always been different from me. Where I was frugal and content with simplicity, she aspired to luxury and status. Her home was showcased in a local magazine, filled with designer furniture and the latest technology. She drove a luxury SUV and wore clothes with labels I pretended to recognize. I never judged her choices. She worked hard for her success, and if material things brought her joy, who was I to question it? Jake worked in financial services, though I never quite understood exactly what he did. Something involving investments and wealth management for high net worth clients. He was charming and confident, always talking about opportunities and being positioned for success. He came from family money and had an expensive education, which he mentioned often in conversations. He was good to my daughter and the children, if sometimes distracted by his phone and work commitments. David called regularly from Portland, checking in on me and sharing updates about his family. He worried that I wasn't standing on my own, that I might be sacrificing too much of my independence. "Mom, are you sure you're okay there? You could move out here. We could find you a little place nearby." But uprooting to Oregon seemed too dramatic, too final. Besides, I had begun rebuilding my life in small ways. I secured a part-time position at the local library shelving books and helping with children's story hour twice a week. The work was easy on my aging knees and rich for my book-loving soul. I opened a savings account, depositing a small amount each month toward an eventual senior apartment. I joined a weekly coffee group for women over 60 at the community center. I was adjusting, adapting, finding my footing in this new chapter. I believed the arrangement with Megan and Jake was temporary but stable. I had no idea how quickly everything would change. It happened on a Sunday in April during one of our family dinners. I had prepared lasagna, Jake's favorite, with garlic bread and a Caesar salad. The children were unusually well behaved, excited about an upcoming school field trip. Megan had opened a bottle of expensive red wine, and the conversation flowed easily between topics: work projects, neighborhood gossip, the children's activities. As I served coffee and the apple crumble I'd baked that afternoon, Jake cleared his throat and straightened in his chair, the universal signal that an announcement was coming. "I've been working on something big," he said, his voice vibrating with excitement. "And it's finally happening. I've secured rights to open 3 locations of elite fitness in the metro area." Megan squealed with delight, clearly already in the know. "It's the most exclusive fitness franchise in the country right now. Celebrities, executives, everyone who's anyone is a member." Jake launched into an enthusiastic explanation of the concept. Not just a gym, but a lifestyle destination with luxury amenities. Personal training by former Olympic athletes, nutrition counseling, recovery spa services, and exclusive networking events. The market research is incredible. He continued, pulling out his tablet to show us sleek graphics and projections. Fitness spending is up 47% in high-income demographics. The first location will break even in 18 months, and after that, the profit margins are exceptional. Megan beamed with pride. "Jake's been working on this for months. It's going to change everything for us." I smiled and nodded, asking appropriate questions about locations and timelines. But privately, a knot formed in my stomach. This wasn't Jake's first big opportunity. In the time I'd been living with them, he'd enthusiastically discussed importing specialty olive oil, investing in a friend's tech startup, and buying commercial real estate for a mixed-use development. None of these ventures had materialized beyond the talking stage. I kept these thoughts to myself. It wasn't my place to question Jake's business acumen. Besides, perhaps this time was different. He certainly seemed to have done more research and planning than with previous ideas. A week later, Jake asked if he could speak with me privately. Megan was at a work event, and the children were already in bed. We sat at the kitchen island, 2 cups of tea between us. "Nettie, you know how much we love having you here." He began, his tone warm but businesslike. "You've been such a help with the kids, and this arrangement has been great for everyone." I nodded, waiting for the other shoe to drop. The elite fitness opportunity is moving forward faster than expected. The franchise fee and initial setup costs are substantial, about $650,000 for the first location. My eyebrows rose involuntarily. That was far more than I had imagined. "We've secured most of the financing," he continued, "but we need another $150,000 to complete the package, and that's where I could use your help." I took a careful sip of tea. "My help, Jake, you know, I don't have that kind of money." He smiled reassuringly. "Of course not, but you have something equally valuable, an excellent credit rating. Frankly, it's better than mine or Megan's. We've talked to the bank, and if you would co-sign a business loan for that amount, we could secure much better terms." The request hung in the air between us. I struggled to maintain a neutral expression while my mind raced. Co-signing a $150,000 loan was no small matter, especially at my age with limited income and few working years ahead of me. "That's a significant commitment," I said carefully. "What happens if the business struggles to make the loan payments?" Jake's expression tightened slightly. "That won't happen. The business model is solid. But worst case, Megan and I would cover it from our personal funds." "Could I see the business plan? The projections? The market analysis?" I asked. "Sure, but it's pretty technical. Lots of financial jargon that might not make sense unless you're in the industry." His tone had shifted slightly, condescending. "The important thing is that this is a proven franchise model with success across the country." I promised to think about it, which seemed to satisfy him for the moment. But over the next few days, my concerns only grew. When Jake finally shared the business plan, it was filled with optimistic projections, but light on concrete details about operating costs and competitive analysis. When I asked specific questions, he became defensive. "Nettie, no offense, but the fitness industry has changed a lot since your day. These aren't community rec centers. These are premium lifestyle destinations." "I understand that," I replied. "But business fundamentals remain the same. Expenses, revenue, competition, market saturation." He sighed heavily. "Look, if you're not comfortable with this, just say so. But this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for our family's future, for your grandchildren's future." That night, I called my friend Martha, who had worked in banking for 30 years before retirement. She listened to the scenario and then spoke bluntly. "Nettie co-signing means you're equally responsible for the entire amount. If anything goes wrong, anything, they can come after your assets, your pension, everything. At our age, we can't afford to take risks like that. We don't have time to recover financially." I researched fitness industry statistics online at the library. The failure rate for new gyms and fitness centers was staggering. Nearly 70% closed within the first 3 years. Even franchise operations weren't immune, especially in the premium sector, where membership costs were high and customer loyalty was fickle. For 5 nights, I barely slept, weighing family harmony against financial wisdom. My savings, though modest, represented security for my remaining years. If I had to use it to cover a defaulted loan, I would have nothing to fall back on. With a heavy heart but clear conscience, I decided I could not sign the loan. I chose a quiet evening when the children were asleep to speak with Jake and Megan together. We sat in their elegant living room, me perched on the edge of an uncomfortable designer chair, them on the sleek grey sofa across from me. "I've given this a lot of thought." I began, my hands clasped tightly in my lap to hide their trembling. I'm sorry, but I can't co-sign the loan for the fitness center. Jake blinked genuine surprise, crossing his face. He had been so confident in my agreement that my refusal seemed incomprehensible to him. Excuse me. His tone was soft but sharp. I'm not comfortable taking on that level of financial risk at this stage in my life, I explained. I've researched the industry, and the failure rates are concerning even for established franchises. Jake's expression hardened. With all due respect, Nettie, what exactly do you know about business analysis? This isn't like balancing a checkbook or planning a classroom budget. The dismissive comment stung, but I kept my voice steady. I know enough to understand that co-signing makes me fully responsible for the loan. At my age with limited income, I simply can't take that risk. Mum, this is Jake's dream, Megan interjected, her voice tight with disappointment. He's worked so hard on this. The research, the networking, everything is in place except this one piece of financing. I understand that, and I want to support you both. I could watch the children more hours to save on childcare costs. I could increase my monthly contribution. We don't need a babysitter or an extra $100 a month, Jake interrupted, standing abruptly. We need a business loan to secure our future. He paced across the expensive area rug, running a hand through his hair. I don't think you understand what's at stake here. I do understand, I said quietly. I understand that you're asking me to put my financial security at risk. If something went wrong, I could lose everything I have left. Nothing is going to go wrong. Jake's voice rose. God, this is so typical. Older generation afraid of taking risks, stuck in the past. Jake, Megan said softly, a warning in her voice. He took a deep breath, visibly trying to control his frustration. I need some air. Without another word, he strode from the room and out the front door. I heard his car start moments later. Megan and I sat in uncomfortable silence for several seconds before she spoke. Mum, I don't understand. We've given you a home security. We've been there for you when you needed us most. And I'm grateful, truly. I reached for her hand, but she pulled away. Are you... Because it seems like when we ask for one thing, just one thing, you can't be bothered to help. It's not that simple, Megan. This isn't about willingness to help. It's about financial responsibility. Her eyes flashed with anger. It's about trust. You don't trust Jake's business acumen. You don't trust us to make this work. It's not about trust, I tried to explain. Even the most successful business can face challenges. The economy changes, competition emerges, unexpected expenses arise. Save the lecture, she cut in. You taught third grade, not MBA courses. The remark hurt more than she knew. I had always been proud of my teaching career, the difference I'd made in children's lives. Megan had never before implied it was somehow lesser than her corporate career path. If you won't help us build our future, she continued, her voice cold, then don't expect to stay here long. We offered you a place because we thought we were family who supported each other. Clearly, I was wrong. The words hit like a physical blow. I struggled to maintain composure as I responded. Megan, you can't mean that. I'm your mother. I love you. I love this family. If you loved us, you'd sign the loan, she said simply, standing up. I'm going to check on the kids. She left me alone in the living room, stunned by how quickly everything had unraveled. In the space of 20 minutes, I had gone from beloved grandmother and mother to unwelcome burden. Over the next few days, the atmosphere in the house became unbearable. Jake barely acknowledged my presence, responding to any greeting with a curt nod. Megan was coldly polite, speaking to me only when necessary, and usually about practical matters. "We're having dinner at 7, she would say. Or, "Emma needs her science project in by Friday." The children, sensitive as children, often unnoticed the change. Emma asked me one afternoon, "Grandma, are you and Mummy fighting?" "No, sweetheart," I assured her, though the lie tasted bitter. "Grown-ups sometimes have disagreements. It doesn't mean we don't love each other." But love felt very distant in that house. I overheard whispered arguments between Megan and Jake in their bedroom at night. One evening, passing the home office, I caught fragments of Jake's phone conversation. "We need that money now, or we lose the franchise spot. No, the bank won't budge without a co-signer. I'm working on another angle." The tension was palpable, suffocating. I found myself retreating to my little guest house whenever possible, avoiding common areas where I might encounter Jake or Megan. The joy I had found in being close to my grandchildren was now overshadowed by the constant strain. After a particularly difficult day, when Megan had pointedly mentioned a small senior apartment complex across town, "They're quite affordable, I hear," I made my decision. I would not wait to be evicted from my daughter's life. I would leave on my own terms with what dignity I had left. The decision to leave was easier than figuring out where to go. My savings were modest, and rental prices in our area had skyrocketed in recent years. I spent afternoons at the library using their computers to search for affordable housing options. Senior living communities were beyond my budget, and most apartments required income at least 3 times the monthly rent, an impossible threshold on my limited pension. After 2 weeks of searching, I found a small studio apartment in a seniors-only building 15 miles away. It wasn't in the best neighborhood, and the building was older, but it was clean and secure. The rent would stretch my budget thin, but I could manage it if I was careful. The lease term was 6 months, enough time, I hoped, for emotions to cool and relationships to heal. I signed the paperwork and paid the deposit using a significant portion of my emergency savings. I arranged to move in the following week, scheduling the date for a day when I knew Megan and Jake would be taking the children to a cousin's birthday party. I couldn't face another confrontation, and I feared that if Megan asked me to stay, even half-heartedly, my resolve might weaken. The morning of my departure, I woke before dawn. I had already packed most of my belongings in the previous days, a few items at a time so as not to draw attention. Now I carefully folded the last of my clothes and placed them in my suitcase. I wrapped my few precious photographs in soft clothes, Frank on our wedding day, Megan and David's graduation photos, the grandchildren's school pictures. These memories at least could not be taken from me. In the quiet morning light, I wrote a letter to Megan. I chose my words carefully, avoiding accusations or bitterness. I expressed my love for her, and the family explained my financial concerns about the loan in more detail, and shared my hope that with some distance we might find our way back to a loving relationship. I left it propped against the coffee maker, where she would find it upon returning. For the grandchildren, I prepared special packages. For Emma, I left a journal with a note encouraging her to write down her thoughts and dreams, just as her mother had done at her age. For Leo, I selected his favorite picture book about dinosaurs and tucked inside a drawing I had made of us together. On each package, I wrote that Grandma would see them very soon, that I loved them more than all the stars in the sky. At 9 o'clock, I heard the family leave for the birthday party. Megan called out a perfunctory, "We'll be back around 4, not waiting for my response. The sound of the front door closing felt unexpectedly final. I took one last look around the guest house that had been my home for nearly a year. Despite its small size, it had been a sanctuary during my grief, a place where I had begun to rebuild my life after losing Frank. Now it represented another loss, another chapter closing. The taxi arrived at 10, the driver helping me load my 2 suitcases and a single box into the trunk. As we pulled away from Megan's beautiful home, tears slid silently down my cheeks. I was 62 years old and starting over yet again, this time without the comfort of family surrounding me. My new apartment was exactly as I had seen it during the viewing, small, basic, and impersonal. The beige walls needed painting. The carpet was worn in high traffic areas, and the appliances were outdated but functional. The building housed primarily seniors on fixed incomes, and a bulletin board in the lobby advertised bingo nights and monthly potlucks. It wasn't what I had envisioned for this stage of my life, but it was mine. A space where my worth wasn't measured by financial contributions or acquiescence to others' demands. After the taxi driver helped bring in my belongings, I stood in the center of the studio, surrounded by my suitcases and box, feeling both utterly alone and strangely free. I made the bed with the linens I had brought, arranged my few photographs on the dresser, and placed Frank's old sweater on the back of the single armchair. These small touches of familiarity helped, but the space still felt temporary, transitional. That evening I called David. I had been dreading this conversation, knowing how protective he was and how angry he would be on my behalf. "You did what?" he exploded when I explained the situation. "They kicked you out because you wouldn't co-sign a loan." "They didn't exactly kick me out," I clarified, though the distinction felt meaningless. "I chose to leave before things got worse." "Mom, this is unacceptable. How could Megan do this? After everything you've done for her, for those kids. People say things in anger they don't always mean." I said, surprised to find myself defending my daughter even now. "Well, I'm calling her right now and—" "No," I interrupted firmly. "Please don't. That will only make things worse. I need time, and Megan needs time too. Promise me you won't get involved." Reluctantly, he agreed, though his anger remained palpable through the phone line. Before ending the call, he made an offer that touched me deeply. "Mum, let me send you some money to help with the rent. It's not right that you have to drain your savings because Jake wants to play businessman." I declined firmly, but with gratitude. David had his own family to support, and I needed to maintain what independence I could. "I'll be fine," I assured him. "I have my pension, and I still have my library job. This is temporary." After we hung up, the silence of the apartment enveloped me. That first night was the hardest. I lay awake in the unfamiliar bed, replaying the events that had led to this moment, questioning my decisions. Had I been too rigid? Too fearful? Should I have taken the risk for the sake of family peace? But in the quiet darkness, another voice spoke louder, the voice of self-respect. I had made a reasonable decision based on careful consideration, not out of spite or selfishness. If my daughter couldn't respect that perhaps this painful separation yet was necessary, even healthy. For too long, I had defined myself through the lens of family roles: wife, mother, grandmother. Now, forced by circumstance, I would need to rediscover Nettie Coleman as an individual, a woman standing on her own. With that thought providing strange comfort, I finally drifted to sleep in my new home alone, but undefeated. 3 days after moving into my apartment, I received a surprising phone call from Martha. We had arranged to meet for coffee the following week, but she couldn't wait to share what she had heard. "Nettie, you were right to be cautious about that loan," she said without preamble. "Lisa's daughter works at First National Bank, and she mentioned that Jake Barrett had been turned down for business loans at 3 different banks before approaching you." I sank onto my single kitchen chair, phone pressed to my ear. 3 banks? He never mentioned that. "There's more," Martha continued. "Apparently, he had a previous fitness business that failed about 7 years ago before he met Megan. Some kind of personal training studio that went under after less than 2 years. Left investors with significant losses." This information stunned me. Jake had always presented himself as unfailingly successful, someone who understood money and business intrinsically. He had never mentioned a failed venture, certainly not to me, and I suspected not to Megan either. How could I not have known this? I wondered aloud. These things don't necessarily show up in casual conversation, Martha replied diplomatically. But it certainly explains why the banks were hesitant and why he turned to you. Your credit score and clean financial history would have been valuable assets to secure the loan. After speaking with Martha, I felt a complex mix of emotions: vindication that my caution had been warranted, but also deeper concern about Megan and the children's financial security. If Jake had hidden significant business failures from his family, what else might he be concealing? A week after my departure, I received a text message from Emma. Grandma, I miss you. When are you coming home? The message brought fresh tears. I had explained my departure to Megan via the letter, but clearly the children had not been given a satisfactory explanation. I responded carefully. I miss you too, sweetheart. I'm staying at a new place for a while, but I would love to see you very soon. Ask Mummy if we can meet at Riverside Park this weekend. Later that day, Megan called. Our conversation was brief and tense. Emma says you want to see the kids, she said, her voice carefully controlled. If that's all right with you, I replied, equally measured. I miss them terribly. A pause. Saturday at 2, the playground at Riverside. We'll stay for an hour. Thank you, Megan. And how are you doing? Is everything? We're managing. She cut me off. See you Saturday. The meeting at the park was awkward but precious. The children ran to me with uninhibited joy, Leo launching himself into my arms with such force I nearly toppled backward. Emma showed me her loose tooth and the friendship bracelet she had made in art class. They seemed unaware of the tension between their mother and me, though they asked repeatedly when I would be coming home. Megan stayed at a distance, sitting on a bench while I played with the children on the swings and slides. She looked tired, I noticed, with dark circles under her eyes, and none of her usual perfect makeup and styled hair. Several times I caught her checking her phone with a worried expression. As our hour drew to a close, I approached her bench while the children made one last trip down the slide. Thank you for bringing them, I said sincerely. It means the world to me. She nodded stiffly. They've been asking for you. Megan, if you ever need to talk. We need to go, she interrupted, standing and calling to the children. Daddy's waiting for us at home. I watched them leave Emma, turning to wave until they disappeared around the corner. The visit, though brief, had filled a hollow space in my heart. Whatever issues existed between adults, the bond with my grandchildren remained unbroken. 2 weeks after I moved out, my doorbell rang unexpectedly. I wasn't expecting any packages, and I had made few acquaintances in my new building. When I opened the door to find Megan standing there, I was momentarily speechless. She looked worse than she had at the park. Her clothes were wrinkled, her hair pulled back in a hasty ponytail, her eyes red-rimmed as if she'd been crying. Can I come in? She asked, her voice small. I stepped aside, gesturing her into my tiny apartment. She glanced around, taking in the sparse furnishings and limited space. For a moment, I felt embarrassed by the contrast between this place and her elegant home, but I pushed the feeling aside. This was all I could afford, and there was no shame in that. Would you like some tea? I offered, falling back on the social niceties that can provide structure in awkward moments. She nodded, sinking onto my single armchair while I busied myself in the kitchenette. For several minutes, the only sound was water boiling and cups being arranged on a tray. When I finally sat on the edge of my bed, the only other seating available, Megan seemed to be gathering her courage. You were right, she said finally, her voice barely above a whisper. About the loan. About everything. I waited, giving her space to continue. Jake's been lying to me, Her voice caught. We're 3 months behind on the mortgage. He's made risky investments without telling me. Taken out credit cards in his name but linked to our joint account. She looked up, her eyes swimming with tears. The fitness center franchise was his last desperate attempt to fix everything with one big success. The confession poured out of her, how she had discovered their financial troubles only after my departure, when an overdue notice from the mortgage company arrived that Jake had apparently been hiding. How she had confronted him and learned the extent of their debt. How his confident exterior had masked mounting financial anxiety for years. "I'm so sorry, Mum," she said, tears now flowing freely. "The things I said to you. I was so caught up in believing in Jake and his vision. I didn't want to see the red flags." I moved to kneel beside her chair, taking her hands in mine. "Oh, Megan, I'm so sorry you're going through this." "I told you to leave," she said, her voice breaking. "My own mother. Because you wouldn't risk your financial security on a business that 3 banks had already rejected as too risky. How could I have been so blind, so cruel?" "We all have blind spots when it comes to those we love," I said gently. "You wanted to believe in Jake's dreams. There's no shame in that." We talked for hours that afternoon. I made more tea, then simple sandwiches as the conversation extended into evening. Megan shared her fears about their financial future, her anger at Jake's deception, her worry for the children's stability. I mostly listened, offering support without judgment. "What will you do now?" I asked eventually. She sighed heavily. "I don't know. Jake says he can fix things, that he has plans. But I don't know if I can trust his plans anymore." She looked around my small apartment. "I definitely can't ask you to move back in with us. Not when we might lose the house ourselves." "One day at a time," I advised. "First, get a complete picture of your financial situation. Every debt, every account. Then talk to a financial counselor, not one of Jake's friends, but someone independent." She nodded, looking exhausted but marginally calmer. "That's good advice. I'll start tomorrow." As she prepared to leave, she hugged me tightly. "I'm still angry with Jake, and I'm ashamed of how I treated you. But oddly, I also feel relieved. No more secrets, no more pretending everything's perfect when it's falling apart." "That's a starting point," I told her. "Honesty usually is." After she left, I sat quietly in my apartment processing the revelations. My heart ached for my daughter and grandchildren facing uncertainty and potential financial ruin. But a small part of me also felt vindicated. My instincts had been correct. My refusal to sign the loan hadn't been overcaution or lack of faith. It had been wisdom born of experience. I slept better that night than I had since leaving Megan's house, comforted by the reconciliation and the knowledge that while difficult times lay ahead for my family, at least we would face them with truth between us. Almost exactly 1 month after I moved into my apartment, my phone rang at 11:30 p.m. It was Megan, her voice high and tight with distress. "Mum, I need you. Jake's gone. He took his clothes, emptied our joint accounts. There's a note saying he needs time to sort things out and will be in touch when he has a plan." The words tumbled out between sharp breaths. "The kids are scared. I don't know what to do." "I'm coming," I said immediately, already searching for my shoes. "I'll be there as soon as I can." I called a taxi, the late-night fare taking a significant bite from my carefully budgeted month. But some emergencies transcend financial considerations. My daughter needed me, and nothing would keep me from her side. The house I arrived at was markedly different from the one I had left. Lights blazed from every window, as if Megan was keeping darkness at bay through sheer illumination. When she opened the door, she fell into my arms, something she hadn't done since she was a teenager, overwhelmed by her first heartbreak. He's been planning this, she said as she led me inside. Bank records show he's been moving small amounts to a private account for months. He took nearly $40,000, everything that was liquid. The children were huddled together on the sofa in their pajamas, Leo clutching his favorite dinosaur toy, Emma, with her arm protectively around her little brother. Their faces brightened momentarily when they saw me. "Grandma's here to help," I assured them, keeping my voice calm and steady despite the chaos surrounding us. "Everything's going to be okay." It took an hour to get them settled back to sleep, with promises that I would still be there when they woke up. Once they were tucked in, Megan collapsed at the kitchen table, a stack of papers in front of her. Bank statements, credit card bills, mortgage documents. "I don't even know where to start," she said, her voice hollow. "There's so much I didn't want to know." I made us both tea, a small familiar comfort in a situation spiraling beyond our control. Then I sat beside her and began sorting the papers into organized piles. "First, we need to understand exactly where you stand financially. Then we can make a plan." We worked through the night, creating a comprehensive picture of the family's financial situation. It was grim. Beyond the 3 months of missed mortgage payments, there were maxed-out credit cards, a second mortgage I hadn't known about, and various high-interest loans. Jake had leveraged everything for his business ventures and speculative investments, most of which had failed to materialize the returns he had anticipated. "How could I have been so stupid?" Megan whispered around 3 a.m., staring at the columns of numbers we had created. I signed documents without reading them. I believed everything was fine because our lifestyle never changed. If anything, we spent more each year. "You trusted your husband," I said gently. "That's not stupidity. But now we need to focus on practical next steps." By morning, we had a clearer understanding of the immediate challenges, preventing foreclosure, covering essential bills, and consulting legal help regarding Jake's actions and potential divorce proceedings. I made breakfast for the children as if this were any normal day, shielding them from the adult concerns swirling around them. After dropping them at school, Megan made her first difficult call to her company's HR department, requesting emergency personal leave, then to a family law attorney recommended by a colleague. With each call, with each concrete step, I watched her shoulders straighten a little, her voice grow firmer. By early afternoon, David called. "I've booked a flight," he said without preamble. "I'll be there tomorrow morning." "Who told you?" I asked, though I already suspected. "Megan. She called an hour ago." He sounded surprised himself. "Said she needed her brother. That's a first." The siblings had never been close as adults. Different personalities, different priorities, different coasts. But crisis has a way of stripping life to its essentials, revealing the bonds that truly matter. David arrived the next morning bringing not just his presence, but his organizational skills and analytical mind. He sat with Megan reviewing the financial documents I had helped her organize, asking direct questions that might have seemed harsh from me, but were accepted from him. "You have 3 options," he told her after several hours. "Bankruptcy, aggressive debt negotiation, or selling the house immediately to clear as much debt as possible and start fresh." The 3 of us formed an impromptu council weighing options, researching implications, considering the children's stability against financial realities. David's outsider perspective balanced Megan's emotional investment and my cautious pragmatism. For the first time in years, perhaps the first time since they were teenagers, my children were truly collaborating. A week into this new reality, we gathered at the dining table after the children were asleep. David had extended his stay, working remotely during days and helping strategize during evenings. Megan had returned to work part-time, her understanding employers allowing a flexible schedule during the family crisis. "I need to make a contribution," I said, placing an envelope on the table. Inside was a check for $5,000, nearly all of my remaining savings. This isn't a loan, it's a gift to help with the immediate bills while we figure out long-term solutions. Mom, no, Megan protested. You need that money. Your apartment, your living expenses. My family needs it more right now, I said firmly. I'm not offering more than I can give. I've budgeted carefully. David looked at me with a mixture of pride and concern. Are you sure about this? Completely sure, I replied. This is what family does. We support each other through hard times. Not by taking foolish risks, but by sharing what we have when the need is genuine. Megan's eyes filled with tears as she reached for my hand. I don't deserve this after how I treated you. This isn't about deserving, I told her, echoing words I had spoken during our earlier reconciliation. This is about love, about being there for each other when it matters most. Over the following weeks, a plan emerged. The house would be sold, but not in a desperate fire sale. With the mortgage company now negotiating due to David's persistent advocacy, Megan had 6 months to find a buyer at a reasonable price. She would look for a smaller, more affordable home where she could rebuild financial stability. In the meantime, expenses would be cut dramatically. Luxury services cancelled, second car, sold, shopping habits changed. Through it all, I remained a steady presence, helping with the children, providing emotional support, and sharing practical wisdom gained through my own experiences of starting over. I didn't move back into the guest house. My apartment lease had 6 months remaining, and maintaining my separate space seemed important for both Megan's journey to independence and my own. But the distance between us was no longer emotional, only physical. The crisis that Jake's departure precipitated had paradoxically healed the rift his demands had created. In his absence, we found a stronger, more honest connection than we had shared in years. 6 months after that night when Jake disappeared, leaving financial chaos in his wake, much had changed in our lives. My small apartment had transformed from emergency shelter to comfortable home. I had painted the walls a soft sage green, found affordable second-hand furniture that suited my taste, and hung curtains that brightened the space. My neighbours in the senior building had become friends, particularly Elaine across the hall, who shared my love of mystery novels and taught me to play canasta on Tuesday evenings. My part-time position at the library had expanded to 30 hours weekly when a staff member retired. The additional income allowed small luxuries, occasionally treating my grandchildren to movies, building a modest emergency fund to replace what I had given Megan, even saving for a weekend trip to visit David's family in Oregon the following summer. Megan had sold the house, finding a buyer who appreciated its features enough to pay a fair price in a declining market. After settling debts, including the second mortgage and highest interest credit cards, she had enough remaining to make a down payment on a modest 3-bedroom ranch-style home in a good school district. It was a 20-minute drive from my apartment, close enough for regular visits, but far enough to maintain our growing independence. The new house was half the size of their previous home, with none of the luxury amenities. But Megan had approached the downsizing with surprising enthusiasm, selling designer furniture and unnecessary possessions, embracing a simpler lifestyle that reflected new priorities. The children had adapted well to the move, finding neighborhood friends and appreciating having their mother more present, now that she worked reasonable hours, rather than constantly striving for the next promotion to maintain their previous lifestyle. Jake remained largely absent, though he had begun paying minimal child support after David's attorney friend sent a strongly worded letter about legal obligations. Divorce proceedings were underway, moving slowly through the courts. Megan had moments of anger and grief about the marriage's end, but increasingly these gave way to relief and cautious optimism about her future. Sunday dinners became our new tradition, but now they happened at my apartment. I would cook simple, hearty meals, Frank's beef stew, homemade mac and cheese that Leo declared better than restaurant food, apple crisp with ice cream for dessert. Megan would bring a salad or fresh bread, and the children would set my small table with careful attention to proper placement of forks and knives. My relationship with David had deepened as well. Our weekly phone calls now lasted hours, covering topics beyond family updates. He asked about my library work, my canasta games, the container garden I had started on my small balcony. I learned about his graphic design projects, his wife's community theatre performances, his children's college experiences. The crisis had reminded us both not to take relationships for granted, to nurture connections before they were tested by difficulty. One Sunday in early fall, as the leaves began to turn and a crispness entered the air, Megan brought up a subject we had been circling for weeks. "Mum, the new house has a finished basement with its own bathroom," she said as we washed dishes side by side. "It would make a perfect apartment for you if you wanted. Your lease is up next month, right?" I dried a plate carefully before responding. "That's very thoughtful, honey. Have you really considered what that would mean, though? Having your mother living with you again?" "It's different now," she insisted. "I've learned so much these past months about what matters about true security, and the kids would love having you closer." "Let me think about it," I said, and I did, carefully weighing all aspects of the proposal. 2 weeks later, over another Sunday dinner, I gave Megan my decision. "I'm going to renew my lease here just for 6 more months, not because I don't appreciate your offer, but because I think we're all still finding our footing in these new circumstances." She looked disappointed, but nodded understanding. "That makes sense, and the offer remains open whenever you're ready." "In the meantime," I continued, "I thought we might start a family tradition. Thanksgiving at your new house this year. David and his family are coming east. They've already booked flights." Megan's face brightened. "Really, David's coming with Sarah and the kids?" "All of them. It will be the first time in 7 years we've all been together for a holiday." The planning for Thanksgiving became a joyful project. Megan embraced the challenge of hosting in her smaller home. David's wife Sarah sent recipes and decoration ideas, and I coordinated between time zones and personalities to ensure harmony. The children created handmade place cards and practiced a Thanksgiving song to perform for their cousins. When the day arrived, the house overflowed with laughter, conversation, and delicious aromas. Watching my family gathered around the extended dining table, Megan and her children David with his wife and college-age daughters, and me at the head where Megan had insisted I sit, I felt a profound sense of gratitude that transcended the traditional Thanksgiving sentiment. This gathering represented not just family togetherness, but family resilience. We had faced financial hardship, betrayal, difficult choices, and painful separations. Yet here we were, connected not by obligation or financial dependence, but by genuine care and mutual respect. After dinner, as the younger children played in the backyard and the adults lingered over coffee and pie, Megan raised her mug in a quiet toast. "To Mom," she said, her eyes meeting mine. "Who had the courage to say no when saying yes would have been easier? Who showed me that love sometimes means making the difficult choice? Who taught me that starting over isn't failure, it's just another beginning?" David added, "And who reminded us all that family isn't about enabling each other's mistakes, but supporting each other's growth." I looked around at these wonderful adults my children had become, at the next generation and flourishing despite recent upheavals, and felt a sense of completion. My journey from Megan's guest house to independent living, from family conflict to deeper understanding, had not been the path I would have chosen. But it had led us all to something stronger, more authentic, and ultimately more loving than what we had before. The lesson I carry forward, which I hope my story illustrates, is that true family support must be built on honesty and boundaries, not just blind loyalty. Sometimes the most loving thing we can do is say no when saying yes would cause harm, even when that choice brings temporary pain. Have you ever had to make a difficult family decision that others didn't understand at the time? I'd love to hear your experiences in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to our channel for more real-life journeys of growth and resilience. And if you know someone facing difficult family dynamics around money or boundaries, share this video with them. Remember, we're stronger when we share our stories and support each other through life's challenges. Thank you for being part of this community.